Jim wanted to be taken seriously as a poet. Because he was such a good-looking guy and because he was such a charismatic performer, as a rock and roll performer, it was very difficult for the press to take him seriously as a poet.
Once I had a little game. I like to crawl back in my brain. I think you know the game I mean. I mean the game called Go Insane.
How can anybody who be in a rock and roll band and jumping around like a wild man, how can he be a poet? Oh my God, that was the whole point of poetry. The beatniks, that's what the beats were. The beats were Dionysian. The beats were the wild men.
Right here, I'm going to release control. We're breaking through. Now you should try.
So for the press to take him seriously as a poet was very, very difficult, and that's why his first self-published book of poems, he put James Douglas Morrison to separate the idea of Jim Morrison, rock star, from James Douglas Morrison, poet. We, of course, John Robbie and I, always knew he was a poet. That's why we were together. That's why we were all in a band together.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, now touch me, babe. Can't you see that I am not afraid? What was that promise that you made? Why won't you tell me what she said? What was that promise that you made? I'm gonna love you till the heaven stops the rain. I'm gonna love you till the stars fall from the sky for you and I.
Jim's poetry, I've always thought, was more like songs than poetry, at least the stuff that we used, you know. If you've ever heard just the poetry, just Jim speaking the poetry, it cries out for music, I think.
Cars crawl past all stuffed with eyes, streetlights shed their hollow glow, your brain seems bruised with numb surprise, still one place to go, the soul kitchen. You know, it's like, man, I'm gonna drum to that. I want to drum to that stuff.
Let me sleep all night in your soul kitchen. Run my mind to your gentle snow. Turn me out in a wonder, baby. Stolen in the neon glow.
We were trying to take beatnik poetry and jazz, except we were taking psychedelic poetry and rock and roll and making a marriage of poetry and music, the same way the beatniks had done. And basically, that's where the Doors come from, that marriage of poetry and music, except it's poetry and rock and roll as opposed to jazz.
Let's swim to the moon. Let's climb through the tide. Penetrate the evening that the city sleeps too high. Let's swim out tonight, love. It's our time to try. Heart beside the ocean on our moonlight drive.
I'm sitting on the beach in Venice, and Jim gets down on the sand and digs his hands into the sand. He was sitting under a blanket, and he began to sing Moonlight Drive. when I heard those words, let's swim to the moon, let's climb through the tide, penetrate the evening that the city sleeps to hide. I thought, and knew this is, in the words of Timothy Leary and what we were all ingesting at the time, this is psychedelic.
To the moon, let's climb through the tide. You reach your hand to hold me, but I can't be your guide.
The reason I joined the band was because Ray handed me a crumpled piece of paper with these lyrics. And I thought, wow, this is wild stuff. I mean, this is poetry. Poetry and rock and roll together? Yeah, I'm gonna be in this band. So I've always considered the lyrics to the song poetry, you know.
At UCLA, Jim and I were both film students, and we were going to be filmmakers. I wanted to get into the dramatic, structured, feature-length motion picture. Jim was more of an experimental filmmaker. He was going off to New York City and was going to work in short experimental films. And when we graduated, he said, I'm off to New York. And I said, well, darn it, you know, why don't you stick around for a while? He said, no, I think I'll find fame and fortune in New York as a avant-garde filmmaker.
The movie will begin in 5 moments, the mindless voice announced.
Jim put a film of his own together eventually called Highway. It's basically the story of a young man in a search for himself, journeying from the desert into the city, where an attempt will be made to heal the city, to heal the chaos, the anger and the anxiety of the populace of the city. He may be a messianic figure. He may be the reborn youth. He may be a pseudo-messiah, quasi-messiah, or he may be a killer on the road. And that's the ambiguity of the film that makes, and Riders on the Storm is, in fact, about the killer on the road.
Thoughts in time and out of season. The hitchhiker stood by the side of the road and leveled his thumb in the calm calculus of reason.
Hi, how you doing? I just got back into town. LA. I was out on the desert for a while. Yeah? In the middle of it. Right. Hey, listen, man, I really got a problem. Well, when I was out in the desert, you know, I don't know how to tell you, but I killed somebody. No, it's no big deal, you know, I don't think anybody will find out about it. Just, this guy gave me a ride and started giving me a lot of trouble, and I just couldn't take it, you know. Wasted it.
So Jim in the movie is calling Michael McClure and running a number on Michael. I mean, this obviously didn't actually happen, except Michael didn't know. Michael thought, yeah, where have you been, man? I haven't talked to you in a while. And all you hear is Jim's end of the conversation. And it's actually, he's goofing on Michael. And at the end of the whole thing, called him the next day and said, no, man, we're just making a little movie. I'm just running a number on you. Because McClure was shocked. He said to his wife, my God, Morrison has killed somebody. And Jim was just playing the part, you know, so.
I want to tell you about Texas radio and a big beat. Comes out of the Virginia swamps, cool and slow, with a backbeat narrow and hard to master.
On Jim's last birthday on the planet, December 8th, 1970, as a birthday present to himself, he went into the recording studio and took his briefcase with the poems in it and began to read the poems one by one. And Robbie said in 1976 or so, he said, "Hey, remember all that poetry Jim recorded?" To John and I. And I said, yeah. He said, "Why don't we listen to it, man? Let's see if we can put Jim's poetry album together for him."
I believe I had heard some poetry that Jim had read on his birthday one night. A guy named John Haney, who was an engineer, had the poetry, and I was listening to it, and I thought, wow, I said, you know, if we could put some music to this, it would be really great, and I bet you Jim would really love it, you know.
And so Robbie went over and took a listen and called Ray and I and said, "Man, let's do something with this for Jim," you know. And we all got together and went, "Yeah, let's do it."
Let's make a radio show. Let's make approximately a 1-hour radio show with sound effects and music and the whole thing, utilizing Jim's poetry, Jim floating over the top of the whole thing.
Now listen to this. I'll tell you about Texas radio and the big beat. Soft, driven, slow and mad like some new language.
While it didn't really lend itself to song format that much, a lot of it was very musical.
Reaching your head with the cold, sudden fury of a divine messenger. Let me tell you about heartache and the loss of God, wandering in hopeless night. Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
I think a lot of poetry is very close to music, except when you write a poem, often you have to be in a state of mind that music can put you in with its hypnotic quality. That leaves you free to, you know, just let the subconscious play itself out wherever it goes.
Where the music is your special friend. Hey, on fire, it is tense. It is your only friend. Until the end. Until the end. Until the
Man, better than a birdman. We need great golden copulations. Fathers are cackling in trees of the forest. Her mother is dead in the sea.
American Prayer is
American Prayer был очень политичным альбомом. Как там, звери жаждут молодой крови, да?
getting obscene on young blood.
Звери — это, конечно, военные, эти толстые генералы.
Slow generals.
Но в то же время там была надежда, даже в критике.
A hope for America, even in the criticism.
Он использовал строчку Дилана.
Blind patriotism is not. What is that Dylan line? Patriotism is the last refuge to which a scoundrel clings. I mean, it's as honorable to be creatively critical than as waving a flag. That's love too.
Make a grave for the unknown soldier, nestled in your hollow shoulder. The unknown soldier.
So I think Jim was certainly a young rebel, angst-ridden person, 22 years old, and seeing the world going to hell in a handbasket. What else could he be? Vietnam was going on. America was not becoming the country it should become. The world is not going in the direction it should go in. One of harmony, love, peace, dancing, psychedelics, getting high, making love, Dionysian revelry. That's what our life is supposed to be.
We didn't write overtly political songs. Unknown Soldier was the one obvious. And we didn't name Vietnam, but you had to choose sides in the 60s. The Vietnam War was polarizing everybody, you know. I guess we were the band to start a revolution.
Blood in the streets in the town of New Haven. Blood stains the roofs and the palm trees of Venice. Blood in the...
So anyway, by the time Miami rolled around, I think the police and the FBI in this country wanted to get us as a symbol of decadence of youth or whatever, you know. Which is, we were trying to save this country.
It's 50% physical. Like, the records are only like half of it, really. There's a whole other element of theater.
It strikes me there's a tremendous mystique about what you're involved in here. It's much more than anything on the surface.
When I was back there in seminary school, petition the Lord with prayer. Petition the Lord with prayer. Petition the Lord with prayer. You cannot petition the Lord with prayer! Can you give me sanctuary? I must find a place to hide, a place for me to hide.
Our stage presentation evolved. At first, Jim wouldn't face the audience. He was so nervous in these little clubs. And then he finally turned around, and, and then he wouldn't stop. After a while, we would be vamping on a chord, and Jim would start to throw in some poetry that we'd never heard, you know? So we'd sort of stay with it and improvise, and I would, my thing was to keep the beat, but also accent on what he was saying. I like to push him or do an exclamation point after.
Well, that was where Jim was able to get, you know, some of that stuff that wasn't really a song out, and we'd be vamping along, and he could do whatever he wanted, and that usually worked pretty good. And, you know, a lot of times he would come up with stuff that he just would make up on the spot, and, you know, it's too bad we didn't record all those shows.
Father, yes, son, I want to kill you. Mother, I want to
It's easy to just say fortune and fame pulled him down, but it's not that easy. Alcohol pulled him down. I think he came in with some demons or things pushing him. He would have done something. If it wasn't music, it would have been some art form. And now, when he died, I was really, I couldn't buy into this, well, it was meant to pack it all into 27 years and make a big impression and goodbye, because I was too upset and sad, and it took me a few years to grieve over his loss.
For if we don't find a neck whiskey bar, tell you we must die, tell you we must die, tell ya, I tell ya, I tell ya we must die.
A vast, radiant beach and cool, jeweled moon. Couples naked race down by its quiet side. And we laugh like soft, mad children smug in the woolly cotton grains of infancy. The music and voices are all around us.
Before you slip into unconsciousness, I'd like to have another kiss, another flashing chance at bliss, another kiss, another kiss.
Pamela was pushing Jim into being a poet and going to Paris and getting him out of rock and roll and Hollywood. I think that was primarily lumping his self-destruction into all of that, which, you know, is part of it.
Ultimately, the problem with the Oliver Stone movie about Jim and the Doors is that Jim is such a over-the-top, alcoholic, insane sort of guy. You don't see the light, the humor, the absolute delight in Jim Morrison. He was a very funny guy, constantly making jokes, constantly being a silly fellow. You know, if you can imagine, I don't imagine most people can imagine Jim Morrison as being silly, but that was the fun of it for the Doors.
They took Frederick to the asylum, and his mother joined him, and for the next 15 years, they cried and cried and laughed and looked at the sun and
People looking at the Doors from the outside think the Doors are this dark and mysterious, gloomy band of three guys making this weird music and just the weirdest poet of all. From inside the circle, we were having a grand time. We were having a great deal of fun.
Eric, could everybody play? Can we get to hear what it sounds like out here?
Hey, let's cop. Well, let's make a record. Yeah, let's do it this time. Let's try that. Isn't there a 6? How's that again? Robbie does 2, John 1, Doug 1, I do 2, and then you come. All
right. That sounds good, Robbie. Here we go. One time, everybody, please.
All right. Wild child, full of grace, savior of the human race.
mean, I created something with these guys that went way beyond what the four of us are. And so it's very special.
Natural child, terrible child, not your mother's or your father's child, our child.
I mean, we were together 6 years very intensely, and it comes back in a few minutes, even if there's many years in between.
O great creator of being, grant us one more hour to perform our art and perfect our lives. We need great golden copulations. When the true king's murderers are allowed to roam free, 1,000 magicians arise in the land. Where are the feasts we were promised?
Bird of prey, flying high, am I going to die? Bird of prey, flying high, take me on your flight. Well, I'll tell you a story of whiskey and mystics and men, da-da-da, and about the believers and how the whole thing began, da-da-da. First there were women and children obeying